seated. Good singing this morning. We're going to turn over to Ruth chapter 4 this morning. Ruth chapter 4. We'll finish Ruth chapter 4 this morning, and then this afternoon we'll come back and I think just hit a few things on the character of the man Boaz that we have looked at throughout this study of the book of Ruth. Ruth chapter 4. This is the final act of our love story that we have been looking at, and it has some themes of redemption, a blessing, and at the end of it, we're going to see the unfolding of some divine providence. Last week, we looked at in depth quite a bit at this idea of the kinsman redeemer, and that Boaz was someone that was qualified to be the kinsman redeemer. He was a relative. He was a close relative. He had the funds or the finances to redeem. And he also, as we found out at the end of chapter 3, had the desire and was willing to redeem. However, like many of our love stories that we see, there's a little snag, right, that has come up at the end of chapter 3. If this was a Hallmark movie, the women would be sitting there and going, oh no, she has to fall in love and get married to the guy in the flannel shirt that she came back to meet, right? That's the story of all the flannel. My wife's rolling her eyes at me, but several of the women are laughing. They understand what I'm saying. But so we got this little snag, and we're going, hey, she has to marry Boaz. But Boaz has said, look, I am not the closest redeemer. There is one person that is closer than I am. And by the law, he is the one that has to have the opportunity. And so we left off at the end of chapter 3, where Boaz was not willing to take shortcuts when it came to fulfilling God's plan. And he was going to fulfill the law. The law had to be fulfilled exactly, and Boaz was not going to try to cheat. He wasn't going to try to steal. He was going to follow through with the rules that God had set back in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy. And so as we continue here looking at this idea of a foreshadowing, that we see Boaz as a type or a shadow of Christ, we're going to see Boaz today complete the work, and he is going to secure the future for Ruth and Naomi, and he doesn't know it yet, but he is securing the lineage of King David from which Jesus will flow through. And so we're going to look here this morning. We're going to pick up, and I think we're going to read probably the first, we'll just work our way through just like we did last week, picking up in Ruth chapter 4, verse number 1. We're going to be looking at here the legal process that Boaz is getting ready to go through, showing us that this redemption that he is getting ready to do, it's not just a feeling of love, but it is a formal, legally binding act. And we're going to see Boaz fulfill the law, cutting no corners. So if you remember last week, he had sent Ruth away. He had given her the measures of barley. He had not left her empty. And the chapter ends with Naomi telling Ruth, just rest here. Be patient, because the man will not be in rest. He's going to go deal with this. And we start chapter 4 with Boaz dealing with the issue. And so verse number 1. Then went Boaz up to the gate and sat him down there, and behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by, unto whom he said, Ho, such a one. I just always get a kick out of that one. Turn aside, sit down here. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city and said, Sit ye down here. And they sat down. And he said unto the kinsman, Naomi that is come again out of the country of Moab selleth a parcel of land which was our brother Elimelech's. And I thought to advertise thee, or let you know, saying, buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. If thou wilt redeem it, redeem it. But if thou wilt not redeem it, then tell me, that I may know. For there is none to redeem it beside thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I will redeem it. Then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also of Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of the dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. And the kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Now this was the manner in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, for to confirm all things, a man plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor, and this was a testimony in Israel. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for thee. So he drew off his shoe. And Boaz said unto the elders and unto all the people, ye are witnesses this day that I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead be not cut off from among his brethren, and from the gate of his place. Ye are witnesses this day. And all the people that were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that has come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. And let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. And so the chapter starts out here with Boaz going straight to the city gate. You know, there was no county courthouse. There was no buildings like that where you would go and deal with your legal issues, but these were done at the city gate. And so Boaz, he gets up in the morning, he has sent Ruth away, and he is going to deal with what the issue right away. And he goes and he sits in the city gate, and he waits for this nearer kinsman to come by. And he sees the man walking by. You can maybe see this in your mind's eye. Boaz is sitting there at the gate of this city, and he's just waiting for this man to walk by. And he's coming out maybe to go do his duties in the field that morning. And Boaz says, hey, you, which is basically what he's saying here. In fact, the actual interpretation of that ho such a one is, hey, so-and-so, I have something to talk to you about. And he has this discussion, and he gets him to come, and he sits down, and Boaz says, now wait a second here, I have something to talk with you about, but this is something that needs to be witnessed. This is a legal thing that it is that we're going to talk about. And it says there in verse 2 that he takes 10 men, 10 elders of the city, and he says, I want you to sit down, and I want you to listen to this legal thing that is getting ready to happen between myself and this other relative of mine. And they all sit down, and Boaz begins to talk to this man. And he says, you remember that Naomi she's now come out of the country of Moab. She's poor, she's destitute, remember? Her husband is dead, her sons are dead. She needs to sell the parcel of land. And as we talked about last week, they were supposed to keep it within the family, and we don't have time to get into the years of Jubilee and all that, but basically God had set the land up to retain or to remain in the families. And so he said, look, you can buy this land from Naomi. She can't farm it. She has no family left. You are closer than I am, and if you would like to buy this, go ahead and buy it. And the man sees a chance. He says, yeah, I'll buy this farmland. How often does farmland come up that I can use? And I will buy it from Naomi. And this would be in Leviticus. But Boaz now slides some more information in there that this guy wasn't quite expecting. He says, not only are you buying the land from Naomi, but when you do, you need to fulfill the Levirate law of marriage, and you need to marry this woman that has come back with Naomi, this Moabitess woman named Ruth. When you buy the land, you are obligated to marry Ruth as well so that you can keep the land within the family. It is your job to continue to do this, to redeem the land and to redeem the lineage so that her sons can still have this land that you're getting ready to buy because it's for their family. So he goes, you need to marry Ruth to raise up an heir for this dead man, Elimelech, our brother. We don't know the exact relation. And at this point, the man all of a sudden changes his mind. And he says, for whatever reason, he makes a statement. He says, I cannot mar my own inheritance. Maybe he's already got sons, family. It doesn't tell us. But there is something in here that has caused him to say, you know what? I do not want to marry this woman, Ruth. And I'm not going to do it. And so I'm going to pass over this. I'm not going to do it. In the book of Deuteronomy, when you see and you read through all this, when the man or when the brother refuses the widow, what he was supposed to do was take off his shoe, which we saw here, right? He takes off his shoe and he gives it to Boaz. But when in Deuteronomy, when we read through this, that the legal thing here was if a wife or if the widow had gone to him and he says no, he denies her, then he was to take off his shoe and she got to spit in his face because he is not fulfilling the role that he was supposed to do. And so he does not. He declines. He says, I don't want to marry her. And I think it's interesting that we only have a few names that are mentioned in this in the book of Ruth. One of them is not the name of this guy. And I'm sure that Boaz knew what his name was. They were family. But he calls him such a one, so-and-so, hey, so-and-so. And I was just studying through this, and I was reading through this, and some commentaries made the statement. They thought, basically this guy doesn't want to mess up his name. So he's not going to fulfill the law that he's supposed to. And so God kind of makes sure his name never shows up in the book at all. He's just a so-and-so guy out there. And so he takes off his shoe, he gives it to Boaz, and he says, look, you buy it all. You buy the land, you purchase the right to marry Ruth, and here is my shoe. Not quite how we do things today, but that's how they did things then. So he hands Boaz the shoe, and it's in front of all the witnesses. And at this point, the law is being fulfilled by this man, Boaz. He is doing things in the right way. He is living a life that is filled with integrity. I'm just making an assumption here, so this is my opinion, but I wonder if Ruth and Boaz could have just kind of gone off and gotten married and just done their thing, and no one probably would have said anything. But Boaz knew in his heart that there was someone else that was closer, that was a nearer kinsman that he was. And so Boaz does not cut any corners. He goes and he does what it is that he is supposed to do. And this man who was willing to buy the land was not willing to pay the cost to marry Ruth. He didn't want to ruin his own inheritance. He basically chose his own comfort, his own legacy, over the costly act of selfless redemption. See, it was going to cost this man something to redeem the land and Ruth, and he didn't want to pay the price. But Boaz, the Redeemer, was willing to pay the cost. He was willing to purchase basically everything from Naomi, and he was willing to marry Ruth in the process in order to fulfill the law. We see in verse number 9 through 10, we're going to see that the price was paid. He says, look, you're witnesses. He says there in verse number 9, he says, I have bought all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife. For a reason. Why? To raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. See, the price was paid. The kinsman's refusal gave Boaz now the legal right. And Boaz publicly declares, he says, I have bought all that was Elimelech's, and I have acquired Ruth, the widow. Why? So I can perpetuate the name of her dead husband. He makes an irrevocable promise and paid the full cost before witnesses. The price was paid. The promise was witnessed by those 10 people, those 10 witnesses, and we're going to see here in a minute that there was even more people around that saw what was going on. And as of this point in time, Ruth's future is secure. As we said last week at the beginning of chapter 3, that Naomi was looking for rest for Ruth. Not just so that she could rest and relax, but she was looking for the idea of marriage, that she could be safe, that she could be secure. And as of this point in our story, Boaz has purchased and he has provided a place of security. He made a promise that he could not back out on. He already paid the price. Ruth's future was secure. And I want to make sure I nail this down. Her security was not based on her ability to stay with Boaz, but on Boaz's legal finished transaction. Her security was not based on anything that she could do. As we said last week at the end of chapter 3 at verse number 18, when Ruth had gone home that morning and she's talking to her mother-in-law Naomi, her mother-in-law said, sit still because there is nothing you can do. You have asked for redemption and there's nothing that you can do to earn it. The promise of security from this moment forward was that she could count on Boaz keeping and providing for her because his word was his bond and he had fulfilled the law and he had paid the cost. He had paid the money. He had redeemed her. And this is a foreshadowing, as we said last week, of Boaz being a type or a foreshadow of Christ. Boaz willingly accepts the entire cost, and with the cost comes an obligation. He is buying the land from Naomi, but he's also buying and securing Ruth, the Moabitess. If you look there at verse number 10. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, and, sorry, I lost my place. I'm sorry, verse number 9 says, I bought all that was Elimelech's. Basically, he is buying now Naomi, and he's buying Ruth. He's buying everything from Naomi, and he's buying Ruth. Not in a, like what we would think of today, in a slave kind of way, but he is buying the right to marry her. And what this is a picture of is that Jesus Christ, when he came, when he fulfilled the law, when he paid the price with his death on the cross, he purchased all of mankind, and he ends up marrying the church, the Gentiles, the Gentile bride. Boaz now, he is willingly paid the entire cost and obligation, and that included marrying Ruth, the Moabitess, a Gentile bride. And basically what he is doing, he is fulfilling the demands of the law. And Christ is our ultimate Redeemer who fulfilled the perfect demands of the law. He paid the ultimate irrevocable price of his life to purchase us, mankind. He purchased both Jew and Gentile and makes us his own. And this is what Boaz did. He purchased everything of Elimelech's, which was he purchased both Jew and Gentile. And it was an irrevocable promise, which means that Ruth could count on the fact that Boaz was going to keep his word. Ruth now has the word rest. She has security. And as a Christian, as someone that has believed or trusted in Christ, I have security and I can rest in knowing that Christ has already paid the price, and he will keep me secure, and he will keep me safe. We're going to see some blessings here in verse number, let's pick up in verse number 11. And all the people that were in the gate, so there's others watching besides the 10 elders, and the elders said, we are witnesses. The Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem, and let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the woman said unto Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. And he shall be unto thee a restorer of thy life, and a nourisher of thine old age. For thy daughter-in-law, which loveth thee, which is better to thee than 7 sons, hath borne him. And Naomi took the child, and laid it in her bosom, and became nurse unto it. And the woman, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, There is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. And we're going to see here that there's some things that came with this redemption. The community is recognizing the significance of this act there in verse number 11. And they're getting pretty excited. One of the things that stood out to me as I was studying this is that Ruth, remember, she's not from here. She's from a foreign land. And yet you don't see anybody giving her a hard time about this, right? She has been accepted into the family. The community has recognized what is going on, and they are actually talking and giving a blessing over this couple. There's a total restoration. There's a restoration for Naomi. We see there in verse number 14. And the women said unto Naomi, Bless the Lord that hath not left thee. You know, Naomi, she left full, right? She came back empty. She says, Call me Mara, but her actions in here aren't exactly one of bitterness. She's trying to help her daughter-in-law. And then at the end, she's being blessed. She's being received back. She is restored. She had left full, came back saying, I am empty. And throughout this book, now she has a joyful reversal. Now God has given her a family. God has given her a grandchild that will secure the land. In fact, if you look there at verse number 14, I want to focus on the last part of verse number 14. Which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name may be famous in Israel. They're not talking about Boaz. They're talking about the son, the grandson, because what's the whole point of the Levirate marriage is so that we have a son that can carry on the lineage. And now Naomi has gone from basically her family ceasing to exist to now she has a grandson that is going to carry on the family name and hold the land. And Naomi has gone from leaving full, returning empty, to being received back into the community, and God has blessed her and given her this grandson. And the family and the people there are rejoicing with her. I tell you, we could spend an awful lot of time about receiving people back that have maybe made some bad decisions in their life. We won't stay there this morning. But we see the town, we see the women in the town treating Naomi kindly, welcoming her, being excited about the fact that God has restored her family. So Naomi is restored. That's one of the blessings. Ruth is accepted. Look at verse number 11 again. We're kind of backing up a little bit. They said, and all the people, so not just the 10 witnesses, in the gate, and the elder said, we are witnesses. We are recognizing the law being fulfilled. And then they said, the Lord make the woman that is come into thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel. And do thou worthily and be famous. They're excited for this young woman, this widow. They received her. They blessed her. They asked that her house be, now this is a weird one. We'll talk about this in a minute. And they said, let her be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah. Now, does anybody remember the story there of this one? Pastor Snyder's shaking his head, yes. But Tamar was the daughter-in-law of Judah. Judah was one of Jacob's sons. His son basically dies, and Judah said to Tamar, hey, just wait. I'll find you another husband so you can. The time goes by. Judah's kind of being a jerk, just ignores her. Now, Tamar does something I should not do, but she dresses herself up basically like a harlot, goes out, seduces her father-in-law, and ends up getting pregnant and gives birth to this guy named Pharez. Through now all this lineage later, we are now here at Boaz and Obed, and they're saying, hey, we want you to be blessed like that. Now that's quite the background story of someone, but the point is here that these people are wanting Ruth to be blessed. They have accepted her. I tell you, we as a church, we need to be accepting of those that have been brought under the wing of Christ, that have trusted him. So many churches today, an outsider comes in and it's like, but yet if they have received Christ, they are one of our brethren. And we're seeing here that this stranger has been welcomed into the fold. She has now gone from being, if you think back through our story, she was a poor widow, and now she is a rich bride. She was a foreigner, now she is an accepted wife. She was childless, now she is the mother of a son. God's grace has taken her from poverty and hopelessness to riches and security, from barrenness to fruitfulness. Talk about the grace of God. You know, sometimes our arc in life does a lot of this, but God's grace is still with us. And God showed an awful lot of grace to this Gentile Moabite woman who had lost everything, who took a chance to come to Israel with her mother-in-law and say, I am going to trust your God. I'm going to trust God. As we look down at the last few verses of verse number 18, we get a couple things. Now, these are the generations of Pharez. Now, he said Pharez was the daughter of this crazy relationship between Tamar and Judah. Pharez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Amminadab, and Amminadab begat Nahshon, and Nahshon begat Salmon, and Salmon begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David. The most incredible theme of this chapter is revealed in the closing verses, the genealogy. Now, a lot of times we start reading the genealogies and we kind of, if we're not careful, can just kind of go into a daze and just read through. But what we are seeing here is an outsider being brought in who is unworthy, who is now part of the lineage of Christ. God divinely used this simple love story between two people in the middle of the desert to ensure the lineage of King David, and ultimately through that, the lineage of Jesus Christ. The genealogy includes people like Perez, born through this crazy story between Tamar and her father-in-law Judah, Now we have Ruth the Moabitess, a foreigner from a cursed nation. The Moabites weren't friendly with Israel. I do want you this morning, if you'll turn with me over to Matthew chapter 1. Matthew chapter 1. I want to look at a couple of verses here this morning. Matthew chapter 1. Next, we're about a week and a half out from Christmas, where we celebrate the birth and the coming of Jesus, Emmanuel. And Matthew is written to the Jews. The Jews were very big on, basically, we have to know where you came from. And Matthew was written to the Jews to show them through the lineage that Jesus was king. And I want to take a look at Matthew chapter 1, verses 3. Verse 3. Matthew chapter 1, verse 3. This is the lineage. Actually, let's back up to verse 1. The book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. So there's a quick, but then it says, Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judas and his brethren. And Judas begat Pharez and Zerah of Tamar. And Pharez begat Ezram, and Ezram begat Aram, and Aram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nason, and Nason begat Salmon. Salmon begat Boaz of Rachab, and Boaz begat Obed of Ruth, and Obed begat Jesse. And Jesse begat David the king, and David the king begat Solomon, of her that had been the wife of Urias. How'd you like to go down in time and throughout eternity in the Bible being known as you're the woman that cheated on your husband with the king? And Solomon begat Rehoboam, and Rehoboam begat Abiah, and Abiah begat Asa, and Asa begat Jehoshaphat, and Jehoshaphat begat Joram, and Joram begat Uzziah. And we can just keep going and going, and it goes all the way through the lineage, and it gives us to Jesus Christ. And what it shows us is that there is an unworthy lineage of Christ. And the lineage of Christ is absolutely filled with people who, by the world's standards, did not deserve to be there. In the lineage of Christ, we got someone that has seduced her father-in-law because her father-in-law was being a jerk and he wasn't doing his job. And so she ends up sinning, and they end up having a son. And through Pharez, we go down. We end up reading about the harlot that was in Jericho when they come into the land. She's in the lineage of Christ. We have this Moabitess woman named Ruth who was brought into the lineage of Christ. We have David and Solomon. We have David, and then we have his affair with Bathsheba. None of these people were perfect. None of them were, we would say, good enough. But here's the thing. I think what it shows us is that our worthiness rests on our Redeemer. Was Ruth worthy to be redeemed by this rich man? On the surface, she wasn't worthy. She was an outsider. She was of a nation that was of the enemy of God. And yet this man loved her and redeemed her because it wasn't about her worthiness. And I think one of the things that the devil does is he whispers that you are unworthy to be a child of God, or that you can't be used by God because of your past or whatever. But the reality is that even the best person that has ever lived is still unworthy, because it doesn't rest on me. God uses unworthy people to fulfill his perfect work, and our salvation does not rest upon us because I am unworthy. I am sinful. But it rests upon what the Redeemer, Jesus Christ, has already paid. Boaz redeemed. He already paid. It had nothing to do with Ruth's worthiness, but it had to do with his love and him being willing to redeem and pay. And Jesus Christ has done that for us. He is the one that has paid the price. I am unworthy. We are all unworthy. But God has paid the price because he loved us. What he wants is for us to do what Ruth did with Boaz. Boaz, will you marry me? Will you cover me? And that is what God is wanting today. What Jesus is wanting is, will you ask? As we close with this, the book of Ruth it's a beautiful love story between two real people. But it is a powerful foreshadowing, and it's a wonderful picture of what Christ did for us. It is the ultimate love story of redemption. We saw the picture of Boaz as the kinsman redeemer. He came to redeem. He fulfilled the law. He purchased Naomi and Ruth, both Jew and Gentile, and he married a Gentile, and Ruth became his bride. Jesus Christ, as our kinsman redeemer, came to redeem us. He came and became flesh so that he could fulfill the law, and he came to redeem. He fulfilled the law perfectly, like no one else could. He purchased both Jew and Gentile, and he will marry his Gentile bride, the church. Ruth, before redemption, she was poor, she was lost, she was hopeless, she was a widow, and she became rich, the bride of Boaz, and she was provided protection and security. Us, before Christ, we are lost, and we are helpless and hopeless on our own. But when we place our trust in Christ, we become the rich heir of God, not necessarily in physical wealth, but there are no riches that can compare to being a child of God, to the eternity that waits. We become part of the bride of Christ, and we are given eternal protection and security. As we close this morning, I've talked to almost everyone here, but if you've never put your trust in Jesus Christ, today would be the time to do that. Boaz loved Ruth and redeemed her out of love. And Christ loves us and redeemed us out of a great sacrificial love for us. Just as Boaz's legal payment was guaranteed Ruth's security, Christ's sacrifice guarantees ours. Because the price was paid on the cross, we can count on Christ to keep us secure forever. Our assurance is not in our grip on him, but it is in his irrevocable grip on us. Just like Boaz had paid the price, he redeemed Ruth and Naomi. The price was already paid. Nothing Ruth or Naomi could do. It was all resting on Boaz. And today we can count on Christ to keep us secure because we can count on his grip on us, his promise. And all who trust in him have eternal life, have eternal security, and a new identity. Just like Ruth, she now had a new identity. She went from being the poor Moabite widow to her new identity was she was the rich, married mother, and in the lineage of Christ. She was a totally new identity. And when we place our trust in Christ, he gives us a new identity. We are joint heirs with Jesus. And I'll tell you, that's a wonderful identity. And this morning, I'd encourage you to if you look at the context of this book, and I sometimes wonder if I did a good enough job of it, but I can be secure in Christ. And when we look at the Old Testament, it is full of these pictures that God has given us so that we can rest assured in Jesus Christ and the redemption that he has already paid for us. And if you struggle with that this morning, it's not you. You're not worthy. I'm not worthy. I will never be worthy. It's nothing I can do. But, and that's not an excuse to sin. I hope you understand that. That's not an excuse to go out and do sinful things. But what it does do is it allows me to rest assured in God's safety